Today, we head to the land of fire and ice, a Nordic island where North America meets Europe, where the land is alive with geothermal heat spewing from the ground, emerging as steam, as a warm river, or even a volcano. We are heading to Iceland, a magical, mountainous country with friendly, hardy people who have learned to live off the sea. Our guest today will share not one, but 2 adventure trips he took to Iceland and how, while just sitting at a family dinner one night, he said yes to hiking Iceland, a trip that introduced him to adventure travel. I can't wait to share it with you, so let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. I'm excited to bring you not one, but 2 adventure tours to one of my favorite places I've ever been to, Iceland. I'm also happy to introduce a new affiliate partner for Active Travel Adventures, IAG, International Adventure Guides. You'll hear our guest today, Greg, referring to Kevin all the time. Kevin is the founder of IAG. You'll hear from Greg why he's such a fan. One other reason that I chose IAG to be an affiliate partner is they go to some places that my other affiliates don't go. Yes, I've got some that go to Iceland. He offers a different kind of a trip than just the trekking trip, so I want to introduce you to that as well. It incorporates some other non-hiking adventures in some of his trips, including yoga, which I think is pretty cool. He also goes to Greenland, Norway. In fact, he must love the cold. He's moving to Norway. He also offers some winter adventure trips, including a Iceland Northern Lights trip similar to the one that my sister and I did. And that's an amazing adventure, completely different. And that's why I need to go back in the summertime to see Iceland myself because it's such a different trip. And he goes to the Faroe Islands. So IAG is going to some places that I haven't yet covered on the show. So I'm happy to welcome to the Ada family. It's not just the cold places he goes to, too. He's got some cool warm weather places such as southern Arizona, although where he's taking you to in the Sky Islands, it can get pretty cold because it gets up pretty high there. So even though you're in the southern part of North America, you are going to be on some high mountains as well as down low. So that's a pretty interesting trip, as well as the big island of Hawaii, which has definitely been on my list for a long time. So anyway, welcome to the Ada family, IAG, and let's get on with the show. Oh, I almost forgot. Check this out.
Active Travel Adventures can now be heard on both Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant smart speakers. Just say, "Alexa, ask Active Travel Adventures to play the latest episode."
This is podcast episode 115 and is titled Slovenia Hike Bike Paddle.
So be sure to use your Alexa or Google smart speakers to listen to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. Super cool. Now on with the show. Welcome to the program, Greg. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into Iceland itself, how about telling us a little bit about Greg? Would you mind telling us maybe how old you are, how you got into adventure travel?
Sure. I'm 59 years old. I was in the automobile business for 35 years, and I sold my business just about when I turned 50, about 10 years ago. Got a little bit into some endurance sports, did some marathons, did some triathlons, and was looking for a new adventure. And I was going to start doing some hiking and some things of that nature, but literally had no idea, didn't have a clue. And my wife's family has a big Passover Seder every year in April. And one of her cousins stood up and said that he was going on a backpacking trip to Iceland, and he was a single, and if anybody wanted to join him, they could come along. And I thought, wow, backpacking in Iceland, that sounds amazing. And I looked at my wife and I said, what do you think? She said, go for it. So without really doing any homework or research, I kind of trusted him and contacted Kevin and asked him what I needed to bring. And he was very confident he was going to take care of all the heavy stuff. And I just needed to bring some clothes. And I signed up, booked my flight. And the majority of the people were all coming out of New York. I was up in Boston And it was a little like the Amazing Race for me. I went to the airport, I got on a plane, not really knowing where I was going, got off the plane, had to find a bus, took a bus down to Reykjavik, got in a taxi, took a taxi to an address, got there in the middle of the night and literally had to walk around the back and find a key and knock on a door. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, and a lady came out and she said, "Oh, you must be Greg. Congratulations, you made it." And that was the start of my adventure.
That's really cool. So now, were you at an Airbnb or a hotel or some kind of accommodations prior to the tour? Or is that part of the tour?
No, that was part of the tour. Kevin had set it up that way for us initially.
Okay.
And then we all met the next morning, and everybody else had gotten into town, and we had a late brunch. And then he took us on a tour around the city and kind of got us settled a little bit and got our feet on the ground and got adjusted to the time. And then we took us the next day and we saw a couple of amazing sights. And he was great. He handled everything, took care of everything, basically gave you an itinerary, when to show up, get on the bus. He arranged everything, got us into all the parks and whatever was on the schedule for the day. And just thought I had landed on another planet, not necessarily another country, but I had never been to anything like Iceland. And I was just amazed, and it was beautiful and beautiful weather, and the people were great. Were on the trip, and everybody seemed to get along and share stories and tell jokes. And then we set off on our hike. And our hike was a hike on a famous trail that goes down through the middle of Iceland called the Lautervegur Trail. And it's basically about 50 kilometers, somewhere around 30 to 33 miles. And we do about 6 to 8 miles a day. And there were huts that we would reach a certain point, get to the hut. That would be it for the day. And Kevin brought all the food. He cooked for us. He made some amazing meals out of some things that I still can't believe what he made, what he carried.
I've come to the conclusion that guides seem to take great pride in that no matter which tour company I go with, the food is super important to them.
Yes. The accommodations were good. We had indoor huts, which not everybody had. There was a lot of people that was sleeping outside in tents. And I think at one point, one group actually one hut tried to tell us that we didn't have a reservation inside. And Kevin put the squash to that, and he fixed that for us. And every day we get up and we go on a different hike, and it was like going to a different place. The first day was a glacier. We went up and over ice glacier, got to that hut. The next day would have been a black sand desert, which is nothing that I'd ever seen before, and hike across that. And literally, other than other hikers on the trail, really wasn't too much else going on other than just the natural beauty. We came down across some glacial rivers that we had to cross. That was very interesting. Never done anything like that before in my life. And then crossed some other sections of terrain, saw some wild Icelandic horses go running by us one day as we were having lunch. And Kevin was always great. If we got to the next destination a little early and people still wanted to maybe go for a little extra hike, he would take you wherever you wanted to go, whatever you wanted to see. If there was a ridge line or something up above, and he'd take care of all of that for us. And he was amazing. It was great. And we finished that, got to the end, and got a bus ride back. And that was something in itself, because these buses are four-wheel drive buses. They drive through rivers, they drive through sand and things that you'd never in a million years think that you were getting in the bus was sometimes the water was almost up to the windows. And we made it back to civilization. And then I think he had us set up for Blue Lagoon when we got back to kind of decompress and soak. And
People may not be familiar with the Blue Lagoon is. How about telling us what that is?
so the Blue Lagoon is a thermal spa. It's heated from the earth, from steam, and it could be 40, 50 degrees outside, but the water is still nice and warm and refreshing. And it's got a lot of natural things in it as far as salts and antioxidants and mud and things that are just supposed to be good for you, especially if you've just come off a big, long hike. So get in and relax, and it's like a big, giant hot tub.
And it does have that amazing blue color, too, if I'm not mistaken.
So it's out in the middle of like a lava field. So the background is mostly black rock. And then it's just got this kind of cloudy blue tint to the water. And it's a great place. I think everybody should go there. At some point in their life, it should be on everybody's bucket list. That was the end of that trip. Got to the airport, flew home, had nothing but great things to say about it, told all my friends and everybody what an amazing trip it was. Unfortunately, it took me 7 years to get back there. Kevin and I kept in touch, and he would keep telling me about different trips that he had set up and planned, and they all sounded amazing. And I wanted to go on all of them, but whether there was family or some other plans that I had going on at the time, I wasn't able to get together. Then COVID came, and everybody knows how that worked out. I was actually trying to go on a trip with him to Norway. Weren't sure if we were going to be able to get in, or if we got in, if we'd be able to get out. And then he said, "Hey, what do you think about going back to Iceland again?" And I said, "Sure, be great." And went back. And this one was more of a sightseeing kind of trip. It didn't have the hike, but it had a lot of other fun adventure things. Did some riding ATVs across some sand beaches where supposedly NASA astronauts trained to go to the moon on. And we got a chance to ride Icelandic. We did get a chance to go out on the boat and see the puffins, and that was cute. It's one of my son's favorite animals, puffins and penguins. So I took lots of pictures for my son, sent those to him. We got a chance to ride some Icelandic horses. Had a great day. The weather was beautiful, and they served a great lunch afterwards.
Didn't you also go into a lava tunnel?
The lava tunnel tour, that was another thing, I guess, that I wasn't aware of. But we went there to go hike up to the volcanoes, which were erupting this summer, in the hopes of possibly seeing one of them. But they were kind of quiet when we got up there that day. But I didn't know that the lava also flows underground. And I guess many thousands of years ago, they create these tunnels, and then the lava recedes, and then you can walk through those, and you're literally looking back thousands of years into the beginning of the earth. So that was another great day. Did do a hike up to a thermal spa up in a side of a mountain one day where lots of people go. You hike up there, and then they have changing stations in the top, and whether you decide you want to put on your bathing suit or your underwear or whatever, and just jump in this stream. So here you are in Iceland, 50 degrees out. You just hike to the top of a mountain, and there's this warm stream, and you're just hanging out in the stream, and the water's running over your body, and people might bring champagne, wine, things to eat, and everybody's picnicking, hanging out, having a great time. And again, weather was beautiful. Got to knock on wood. I don't think I've had a bad weather day in either of my trips to Iceland.
And what months did you go, Greg?
I was there in July both times. So we got lots of daylight.
And then also, let's talk a little bit about the geothermal, because Iceland's known for its volcanic, and almost, I believe, all the homes are heated by the geothermal energy. The land's alive. It's the first place I ever saw where you could actually see the land was living. Steam's pouring out, and some things are hot and some things are cold. And can you talk a little bit about this whole geothermal thing and the fact that you went to some spas, or you saw them in the ponds, you saw them in the springs? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I think that it is great to be able to see a country that can live off the environment the way that Iceland does, especially with all of the climate change issues that are going on. But not only the thermal spas or the streams, they do run, as you said, all of their energy is through steam, which is great. But then they also have some areas too where they have some indoor greenhouses. Kevin took us to a spot where they grow tomatoes indoors, and they had an amazing lunch for us. They have tomato soups and any different variation on a tomato that you could imagine, from like a tomato apple pie to tomato martini to not just tomato soup, but just to see how they can grow all these vegetables indoors, in an area that you would think of, with the name Iceland. You wouldn't think that they'd be doing a lot of tomato growing there. You'd think it would be more import, but they've managed to figure it all out. And that's one of the things I love the most about there. They seem to be ahead of the curve when it comes to all that kind of stuff.
So that brings up the topic of food. Talk to us about what kind of food you ate.
I tried to be pretty open with my palate. Whenever we did go to some different restaurants, Kevin always tried to plan out some different things for us. So one night we went to a restaurant where the singer Bjork had a restaurant, and that was pretty neat. Tried some reindeer, tried some whale, tried some shark.
The fresh shark or the fetid shark, the rotted shark?
It was fermented.
Did it taste good or bad?
I wasn't a fan. I wouldn't have recommended it.
Well, they have back in the old days, just to survive, sometimes they would have shark that was a little bit long in the tooth, and I don't remember the exact name of it, but it's like a rotted shark that I guess they eat under duress there, but sometimes people try it just because that is a thing.
You got to try the local stuff while you're there, but it may not agree with everything. We stayed at a place called Fire and Ice. It was a hotel/restaurant up by one of those thermal springs. So there was a stream running down the back. There was hot tubs. And then they had this beautiful enclosed glass restaurant. And we had our own private chef. And he made a meal for us one night. I'm not really sure exactly what it all was, but I think it was white fish. I want to say almost like a cod. Absolutely amazing, delicious. I think he was on one of the cooking shows too. I think he was a finalist on one of the cooking shows. He did an amazing job. So the food was great. No complaints, plenty to eat, and all sorts of good stuff. And there's a little bit of American stuff too, if you a burger or fries, but I try to eat local if you can, especially when you're away like that.
By reading the itinerary, it sounds like some of the meals are included in your tours and others are on your own. So you have some flexibility, I guess, when you're in Reykjavik or other towns, or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So like you said, some are included in the tour, some aren't, but he'll make plans, reservations. And if you want to come along, you can. One of the neat things about Iceland that I don't think that they do anywhere is back here in the States. You go up to your server and you order all of your food, bring the food over to the table. But then when you go to check out, they don't bring a bill for the whole table. So you basically walk up to the cash register as you would say, like maybe in a deli or a diner, and you're going to tell them, I was sitting at that table and I ate A, B, C, D. And they take it off the bill and they tell you how much it is. You give them your credit card and boom, that's it. Thought of how much is this going to cost me? Or the money part doesn't even factor into it. Or, if you're going to split up a bill at the end of the night, or any worries as far as that goes. And if you don't even feel like joining. There was one night that I had a little bit of jet lag and they were going out to dinner, and I decided, you know what, I think I'm just going to stay in the hotel tonight. I think I'll just go down to the hotel. And I was able to do that too. Lots of options. Kevin does a great job of scouting out new restaurants and new places to go to try stuff out.
And you mentioned the lodging, the fire and ice, whatever it was. So you had a mixture of hotels and also the mountain huts. Can you talk a little bit about lodging in general?
So on the first trip I went on, that was more of Airbnb and huts because we were hiking across Iceland. The second one that I just came back from this year, he had us in hotels, and the hotels were great. We stayed in one hotel the first time for a few days, and then we moved to a different part of the country, and he got us a place at this fire and ice, as I mentioned, which was out closer to where we were going to be horseback riding, ATVing, hiking the volcanoes. And we stayed there, and that was spectacular. I really enjoyed that. It was only maybe 20 rooms in the entire hotel. We probably took up half of them. And it was just exactly what you'd imagine: Scandinavia, Iceland, out in the middle of the country. Backdrop, you could see for miles, mountains, hills in one direction, out towards the ocean the other direction, small little downtown that you drove through if you wanted to go for a walk down and check that out. And the people were very, very friendly, always willing to speak in English and help you in any way that you could. And just happy to see you there.
That is one thing we should mention. Even though we would have no hope of being able to pronounce anything Icelandic because their language is very difficult, everybody speaks perfect English.
Yes. And I can't even try to, I think one of the volcanoes that the first one that blew up that shut down Europe for air travel, I can't even pronounce it, but I think they call it like E15. And it's because it's got 15 letters after it, but you wouldn't know how to say it if you tried. But Kevin could speak it all. Kevin's got him down, and we always try to kid him because we're like, "That's not you." Just like it sounded like you sneezed, like he didn't really say the name, and we wouldn't know if he was saying it the right way or the wrong way. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's Alpha. Okay."
There's not enough vowels. I remember I went to Iceland. When I went there, I always try to learn the polite phrases of the thank yous and the pleases and excuse me. And I just so butchered them. They finally said, "Kit, please stop. Just we speak English." But it is nice when you're in a foreign country to be able to maneuver very easily when they speak your language, even though that's not their native language.
No, I agree 100%. Everything was well marked in English, and then it did have Icelandic if you wanted to give it a try, or even how would you even say that? Can't even pronounce it.
Lots of consonants and not enough vowels. So let's talk about your groups too. So on the two trips, tell us a little bit about the composition. The age group, were they couples? Were they singles? Were they just dig a little deeper in the group dynamics?
Sure. The first trip I went on, as I said, my wife's cousin, he and I kind of became bunkmates, but we were actually two singles. There was a couple that was on their honeymoon. There was a dad that had brought his two daughters, teenage daughters. And I'm trying to think of who else was on that trip. There was maybe about 10 of us on that trip. Everybody got along great. And then on the last trip that I was on, more families and a couple of single women came along. Girl from the West Coast. She was an exec with Facebook. Another lady my age who had recently retired. I think she was from the Texas area. Then we had our yoga instructor with her family. They're from New York.
You brought up the yoga. That's something that he's added recently, is adding a little bit of yoga. Can you talk about that? And was that part of your trip?
Yes. So he's got this assistant, and she is a yoga instructor. And on the times when we could fit it in, usually first thing in the morning, it was available to anybody that wanted to join. So whether we were outside by a stream or we were staying inside the hotel, Kevin reserved a room downstairs, a meeting room, did some yoga in the pool at the Blue Lagoon, which was very interesting, trying to keep your balance in the water as the waves were moving side to side. And nothing really, really hard, but just good to get out and stretch and just feel like you're getting some exercise as well. And it's just all the walking around. So I really enjoyed the yoga. I thought she did an excellent job with that. They brought everything. They brought all the blocks. They brought the mats. You didn't have to, never at any point, other than your clothes, did you really need anything. When we went on the hiking trip, Kevin brought all the hiking poles. He brought backpacks. He set up everything. And he actually carried all the food for everybody too, which was amazing in itself. He's very, very good at making sure that you don't have to worry about anything. He takes care of all the details.
Yeah. So when you were backpacking, you were actually backpacking for 4 days. So on that, so he's carrying 4 days worth of food for the whole group, you're saying?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then, so what's in your pack? Just your clothes and toiletries?
Clothes, toiletries, sleeping bag. You know, if you wanted to have maybe a different pair of shoes or something when you got your hiking boots off. You know, you've got a 20, 25 pound pack. His was probably double that.
Was the rest of the stuff that you brought on the trip back at the hotel or back someplace else?
So we left our suitcases back at the hotel in storage, and the same thing on both the trips. So when we went away on this trip recently, if we didn't want to bring all of our stuff with us, we could leave a bag at the hotel in storage, or we could bring it with us. And then from there, we were either going to get dropped off at the airport because we were going past the airport, then to go back to Reykjavik to the hotel to grab your stuff, depending on what time your flight was at. Whatever you were comfortable with.
I want to talk about the puffins. I know you said your son loves the puffins. I didn't get to see the puffins when I was there. Can you tell us a little bit about are there lots of them, or tell us about that experience?
So you go out in a ferry, and the waters, at least the day we went out, was a little choppy. And they take you out to an island, and they have guides, and they're kind of explaining what's going on. And there's an island, and there's literally thousands of them. And there might be some other birds as well, but the puffins are pretty easy to spot. And they're not very big. They're a lot smaller than I imagined. And they just dart all over the place. And they could literally swarm the boat, and then 2 seconds later, they're all back on the island. And it was something great to see.
Are these birds that like to swim like a penguin does, or do they fly? Or I just know what they look like. I don't know anything other than what they look like, and they're adorable.
They are adorable. They're small. I wouldn't characterize them in the same class as penguins. They're not really jumping in the water and swimming in the water as much. I mean, I think they'll pick something off the top. They grab a fish or something, but just swarms of them. That was the thing. Everywhere. They were all over the place. It was very hard to try to get a picture of one because there were so many and they were so fast.
So are they fast, like darting around on their feet, or do they fly, or what do they do?
They're flying.
They're flying. Okay.
Yes. So you're maybe 100 yards offshore. So to zoom in to the island to try to get a picture of one of them while they're sitting still, it's a little too far away. So as they approach the boat, I mean, they're flying really, really fast. So to try and grab a picture of them coming at you,
Right, right.
More almost like a bat, if you can imagine a swarm of bats. And not that you had to worry that they were going to like attack you or anything, but between the wind and the chop in the sea and the boat moving and the waves and the splashing and trying to make sure you were on the right side of the boat. There they are. They're over there. Now they're over there. And they're in the front. They're in the back.
And did they fly in flocks like pigeons do? Like where they'll just make a big wave of birds? Or are they all doing their own thing, like a seagull?
No, good description. Like penguins. They seem to be in flocks. But it was also a nice boat ride to get away from the city and to see the city from the water. There's an orchestra hall right down on the harbor that is all glass that gives you a bunch of different reflections that you can see as you're coming back in. And there was this crazy little James Bond-ish kind of speedboat tied up along the dock. And just to be able to see the city from the water in itself was a different perspective.
So you go in and out from Reykjavik?
Yes, downtown.
Okay, cool. And tell us about the city itself. It's kind of a cool town.
It is. So kind of sits on a hill, and don't ask me to pronounce the name of the church at the top because I can't remember how to say it. But you climb to the top of the hill and there's that beautiful church, and then you can go inside and look around, climb the stairs, get to the top, and then you get the amazing view of the entire city out all four directions. When we got there, they actually were closing, and Kevin was able to talk them into staying open for another little bit of time for us to walk through and then to go and sit in the benches and look up and just take in all the beauty of the church. I've seen churches all over the place. This is something, places to go. It isn't like most churches that you go into. Very Scandinavian in design. And then there's a big statue out front with a tribute to Leif Erikson, the Viking, who supposedly was one of the original founders that came over and discovered. So other than that, the streets are pretty easy to navigate, and it's not a tremendously big city. So I don't feel like you need to worry about taxis or Ubers or anything like that. You can pretty much walk from one end to the other. It's pretty easy to keep your bearings. The harbor's on one side, and the top of the hill is the church, and lots of fun little restaurants, little coffee shops, little ice cream parlors, and of course, lots of places to go shopping if you wanted to, Icelandic sweaters or anything pertinent to Iceland. So yeah, one of my favorite.
Yeah, it is cool. You mentioned Vikings. Didn't you also have your farewell dinner at a Viking longhouse? What's that?
Yes, we did set up when we were leaving from Fire and Ice, and they had it set up like what you would imagine a Viking house being 1,000 years ago. And they served us dinner there. And then they also had some fun activities outside. They had some axe throwing, which we were able to go outside and give that a try, and some bow and arrow shooting. And that was the highlight of leaving the town before we went back to the city.
That's cool. So when you said what I would imagine a Viking house, I don't really know what that means. I mean, is it like a big long table everybody sits together, or what is it?
Yeah, it looks more like that. It's not all one table, but there are big long tables. So our whole group could sit at a table together, which was kind of nice. And then the waiters and waitresses were dressed up as traditional Vikings would have been 1,000 years ago. And if you were ordering some beer, you might have got it out of like a horn. And I think the beer is called mead. They drink back then. So traditional Viking drink and food and wardrobe and the inside of the house. And then some of the other activities that you would have done outside, whether it being throwing axes or shooting bows and arrows. So yeah, fun place.
That sounds like fun. I mean, one thing we didn't talk about too is didn't on the tour that's called the Escape Tour, didn't you also do the Golden Circle tour on that?
I did not do the Golden Circle tour. Wait a minute. There's a ring road that goes around the country.
Yeah, the ring road. Yeah, going around the ring road.
Okay. I don't think we did the ring road, but the Golden Circle, I believe, goes out to the geyser, and then it goes to
and Gullfoss and Thingviller or something like that as well.
Yeah, which is where the tectonic plates separate Europe from North America, and where they did some filming of like Game of Thrones, and there's some spectacular waterfalls out there. Yeah, those are also great places to go and see, and we did that.
Yeah, and that was pretty cool because you can literally put your foot on two sides of the continental divide and be literally in two different continents.
I'm pretty sure I may be wrong, but one side is 10 feet higher than the other. So I don't know if you could actually straddle Europe and North America, but you could touch North America and be standing in Europe. So some of the scenes from Game of Thrones were filmed there, and that was part of the wall. Yeah, it's a great place.
My sister and I did this 2016. We went to go see the Northern Lights, and that was one of my memories, was standing in North America and Europe at the same time, which was kind of cool. But I may be making that up in my brain too, for all I know.
No, and I may have missed that part too. Certainly, there's so many things that you get to go and see and do, and I think the tours are set up so that there's enough to keep you busy all the time, but not so much that you get overwhelmed and it turns into a blur. So he does a really nice job of making sure that the activities are set up so that you get a break from one thing and then you're doing something else and can focus on one thing at a time. It's enough to keep you busy, but not enough that you need a vacation at the end of your vacation when you get home.
Yeah, it sounds like too, you had some free time that you could do your own exploration as well. So you weren't always the group. You had a little bit of flexibility, like in Reykjavik, etc.
Yes. Yeah. He does build that into it too. And if at any time you decide that you want to kind of not go off on your own, but if you want to let him know that you're going to maybe try someplace different for dinner, or you want to go out at night and you want to go have a cocktail or whatever, it's not like you have to stay with the group 24/7.
Cool. We talked about when you went, are there things that you wish you had packed or wish you had known that could kind of give some insight so we would know to do that?
The only regret that I had as far as not packing on the first trip, when we went out and we hiked from hut to hut to hut. You're in huts with other people, not only in your group, but maybe strangers. So there's a little bit of a noise level. You don't have your own bedroom per se. You might be in a room with 20 other people. So earplugs would have been one. And where it was July, it never really gets dark at night. It maybe gets like a little dusky. So maybe having something like a blindfold, just to, because they didn't have any curtains on the windows. So being able to cover your eyes so that you were trying to sleep. Those were the only two things that I wish that I had known about.
How about temperature-wise at night with a sleeping bag? So, I'm one of these temperature control issue people. And so I like to have a sleeping bag liner that I use as kind of a sheet. And then the sleeping bag, when I get cold, I whip that on. Is it hot? Is it cold? What's it like at night?
On the first trip, I don't remember there actually being any issues. The temperature was perfect. I believe it was in the 50s pretty much every day. The last trip that we were on, they had a heat wave. It got up into the 70s and there's no air conditioning. So basically you just had to open the windows and just use the fresh air. I don't remember at any point ever thinking that I needed more layers or anything of that nature.
Very, their heat wave sounds perfect temperature to me. Yeah, very nice. No, I loved Iceland. It's one of my favorite countries. Yeah, but I didn't have the opportunity. I went, like I said, I went when it was cold. It sounds like you're a fan of Kevin and IAG. Tell us a little bit about what you feel of the company itself.
Kevin's pretty good about giving you a packing list as far as what to bring and layers and what you're going to need. So knock on wood, we didn't get caught in any bad storms or any unusual freak weather other than, their heat wave. It got to be 70 one day. I wasn't expecting to be walking around in t-shirt and shorts, but it was fun. Well, as I said, my wife's cousin had booked this trip with Kevin, and I really didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about his background. Went on that trip in 2014, and he's doing his thing. He's taking care of everybody. He's letting everybody know what's going on. He's definitely a leader, and you don't ever feel like he doesn't know what he's doing or he's lost or anything like that. Like, you have total confidence that he knows exactly what he's doing. Before I went on the trip this summer, he just had finished publishing a book about his life, duct tape and baling wire. And I bought the book and I read it. And
I've heard of that book. I didn't realize that was his book.
that's his book and that's his story.
I did not know that.
When you read his story and you find out all the other things that he's done, then I was even more impressed. I mean, here's a guy that was basically, like a Top Gun fighter pilot, got out of that, and then was basically living on the street trying to sell sleeping bags and camping gear, and finally opened up his own store in Brooklyn. And at the same time, I think he's going to school at nights and trying to get a law degree. And he eventually gets his law degree, and then he has the store in Brooklyn. And then he creates this adventure guide tours. And yeah, when the time came to sign up to go on another tour with him, I didn't think twice about it. The fact that I could probably now do some of that or most of that on my own, I still feel like I would want to go with Kevin. I just feel like I like having everything laid out, having an itinerary, okay, this is what we're going to do on this day, and it's all planned, and he just does such a great job. I don't think I'll be going back without Kevin.
Yeah, cool. So what's on your bucket list for our future trip?
My future trip. So during COVID, I was going to buy an RV and I wanted to travel across the country and see all of the United States. And that didn't happen. In the beginning of the summer, that's why I wound up going back to Iceland with Kevin, because the RV dream kind of got put on the back shelf. But recently, especially after talking to Kevin some more and talking to some other friends, they're like, you should really do it. You should go buy that RV and go travel. And having my experiences with Kevin now, I think I could do that. So I'm about to buy an RV and head out on my own and try and go see as much of the United States. I want to see everything that we have here.
Very cool. I bought a camper van right before COVID hit. And so I got to see much of the United States about a year and a half before I headed over to Europe. It's wonderful. You'll love it.
That's on my list, as well as I'm trying to complete the world major marathons. So I've done 15 total. I've done 7 Bostons, 2 New Yorks, and a Chicago. I have a number next October for London. So knock on wood, they still have the race. I'll be doing that for my 60th birthday. And then I have Berlin and Tokyo. So those are my other 2 goals to finish.
Well, good for you. Sounds very exciting. I really appreciate you coming on the program. Is there anything else, Greg, that you need or should tell us about Iceland and IAG before I let you go?
I think we've gone over all of it. I think you hit all the points.
And of the trips that you've taken in the past, how does your Iceland Adventures hold up to those?
I was in the automobile business. I was a Chrysler Jeep dealer, as I mentioned earlier, and I was lucky enough to win quite a number of trips. So I've got a chance to travel extensively, and these were 5-star trips. Been to Scotland, Ireland, London, Rome, Greece, Turkey, Hawaii, Mexico. And again, these are all 5-star top of the line trips. So I do have a little something to try and compare it to, and not to undermine these, but I feel like these were a great value, and on their own, they are amazing trips. So I would highly recommend them to anybody looking to explore and maybe just want somebody to help them a little bit with some of the details. And, especially on the last trip, there was a lot of concerns about COVID and getting tested. And Kevin took care of all that for us, had a test set up for us, got all of our requirements so that we could make sure that we could get into the country, get out of the country, get back to the States. So he took care of everything.
Cool. And are you now a fan of adventure travel?
Absolutely, 100%.
And it gets addicting.
Yeah, it certainly does. He's got some other exciting trips that, I want to just sign up for all of them, whether it be the Faroe Islands or Greenland, or I'm thinking about meeting him in the Arizona desert and doing some hiking and some biking with him down there. And yeah, it's a whole new thing. I didn't realize how many places and how many things there are that you can do. So yes, big fan.
That's why I do this show, is because it was all news to me maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, well, if I didn't know about this kind of travel, other people didn't know about it. So that's why I do this program.
Yes.
Thanks again for your time, Greg, and for coming on the show. We sure appreciate it.
Okay. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
I hope you enjoyed this unusual 2-tour Iceland trip that we took today. It sure brought some fond memories back for me. But like I said, I went in the winter time, so I would love to go back and explore Iceland this summer when I can really get out there and do some trekking, which of course I wasn't able to do in, I think, early March when I went. Super, super cool country. You heard the Ask Alexa and Google Play recordings earlier in the show, where I introduced you to the fact that you can use your smart speakers to access this podcast at your convenience, whether you're cooking or you're working in the car in the garage or whatever it is that you're doing. You can use your voice to access the podcast. I'd love for you to play around with it, because I don't have one of those things, so I don't have the ability to do so. And try some of the skills that you've already learned how to do with it and see how it works with the podcast. And if you would be so kind, if you're able to, I'd love a snippet of a recording of that, and so A, I can hear how it works, and B, maybe I can get it on the program so other people can learn from your experiences. So any help you can give me on the Ask Alexa or Play Google would be most appreciated. Thank you. Again, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on!